out there, everybody. Went through and recently found my old collection of 1990s and 70s and 80s comic books, and went through and just looked through to see if there were any gems or anything worth saving after about 30 years of having since collected them. So did actually find some good nuggets, so we're going to go through those one at a time, and thank you for watching. So we are going to begin with probably 3 comics that, well, at the time when I got them, thought maybe hanging on to them they'd be worth more than they actually are 30 years later, and that is the X-Men launch of 1991 and 1992. Which to the left, that is X-Men #1, which, I've looked on eBay, not the greatest of finds. Probably something that, might fetch maybe $10, $15. Not exactly great. When I was younger, 10 years old, thought, hey, a #1 edition, hey, this could be worth a lot one day. Apparently a lot of other 10-year-olds or adults saw it the same way because, well, I think a lot of people saved it. So, therefore, it's a cool comic book. Love the artwork on it. Love the artwork, particularly on the first three versions. And they are really cool to look at, but as far as collector's items go, not so great, but I definitely like having these guys. They're very cool looking. X-Men, of course, is one of the greatest comic book series of all time. So even though, maybe they're not going to give me the retirement that I hoped for when I was 10 years old, they are still pretty darn cool and definitely nice, valuable components of my collection. So next on the list of old comic books that I had back from the day are the Toxic Crusaders. Ended up having the first 5 of this series, and when they came out, I thought they were just a really, really cool concept. The cartoon I thought was really cool at the time, so I was a Toxic Crusaders fan when I was 10. I thought the action figures that they made were really neat, pretty detailed, so I had a small collection of those. And I thought the comics were actually really good too. And I thought there was some really good artwork on them, and definitely snatched up the first 5 as they came out. Of course, always saving them in the hopes that, like with the X-Men, they would also be, somewhat valuable. And, well, even though Toxic Crusaders was not the phenomenon that Spider-Man, X-Men, the Incredible Hulk, or any of those other, heroes in the Marvel-verse are, or in the DC-verse, they're still pretty cool. And they're just really neat gems. A lot of nostalgia looking at these, and I'm really still happy I saved these because, there's a lot of nostalgia of buying them, reading them, even taking them to school, and just in general having a good time with them. And remembering these old classic characters. Just a lot of fun. And the artwork is really, really nifty on them. And it's a shame that they did not become the phenomenon that some of the other Marvelverse characters are. But either way, definitely had the first 5 and really much enjoyed them. So up next we got a couple of classics from the 1970s. One of them is a Star Wars comic from the original 1977 line, which retailed for 35 cents. And then to the right is a Captain America annual edition from 1976. The one on the right, the Captain America, I picked that up back when I was a kid. I thought it was just really cool cover art, and just some like classic 1970s designs. Just in general, just thought it was really, really cool. So definitely, Captain America fan had to pick it up. On the left, this one is a great gem. I am really happy I have this, and I'm really happy I saved this one. This is Star Wars #6, with Luke Skywalker and Darth Vader dueling it out on the cover. This I kind of happened into when I had tagged along with my mom on an antiquing trip, and going to an antique store is definitely not something fun for a teenage boy. They'd probably rather do just about anything else. But while I was there and browsing around, I did come across this little guy for about retailing, I think they were trying to sell it for $7 or $8. And thinking like, hey, that's a pretty cool comic book. It's old, probably might be worth something. If not then definitely later on down the road. So I managed to go ahead and pick that up while I was there. It's in pretty solid good shape too. So to take a definitely look at it, it's like, yeah, it might be a little faded. There might be some spine ticks, and there might be some like discoloration. Some of the edges are a little blunted, but for the most part, it is in really, really good shape. I'm not sure what it would be rated if I sent it off to get graded, but I think it would definitely still be a collector's grade piece, and still quite a really nice piece of the collection to have, and something that I am quite glad I hung on to over the years. Next are the Infinity War comics. This was a short-lived Marvel series back in 1992. I think it had 6 editions total, and then it was discontinued. I think it got a new life when Avengers Infinity War later came out several years ago, and with too much fanfare. I remember getting these comics specifically because the cover art was just so darn cool, because you had all these different characters, and of course they were fighting one another, and it was just a really neat concept at the time. And for the time, I mean, they retail for $250, which was about twice as much as a regular comic book at the time period, which was it for $125. That's what your other general comics went for. But these were just, you know, a little larger, had some fold-out covers, and just really nice pieces. And I have gone on and looked to see if the Infinity War are valuable collector's items, and it seems like they do actually have some value, especially Infinity War #1. And if it's a high grade, if you can find one that's a high grade, you could probably sell it for maybe $100 or so, which is definitely a pretty good return on investment, especially if you bought this back in 1992. I'd probably say my favorite one of these 3, as far as covers go, is probably the second one. I don't know what it is about the cover, but it just strikes out as being my favorite. The first one obviously is definitely a classic. I love that picture of Wolverine right there on the front. It just looks more like kind of a group photo, more of a kind of a group pose with all the different characters. The second one, definitely you see some action going on between the characters, and that's kind of why the second one is my favorite. But overall, these were excellent comics. They were fun to read, and just awesome artwork in general. So we're now starting to actually get to some of the real gems of the collection, and this one is Iron Man 281, which is known for having the first cameo appearance of War Machine on the very, very last page. This one I picked up in my local comic book store when I was 10 years old. Just thought it was cool. I was a huge Iron Man fan back when I was much younger, so I was definitely leaning towards getting the Iron Mans. Picked it up because it was actually just the most current one out, and got it because I really liked it. Had no idea that one day that this would actually be considered a highly collectible comic book, which it later on did. Did see where I think a record where like a near mint or mint went for $1,750 at once, which definitely isn't what I was seeing on eBay. It looks like most of these go for anywhere between $50 to $200, $300. And of course, the higher ends, of course, are usually graded, and they're of course slabbed. This one, not sure if I would ever send this off to be graded or not. Mostly because it does have a few spine tips with color breaks. Other than that, it is actually in really good shape. The cover is in great condition. Pages are in great condition, so not sure what it would get if I were actually to send it off to get graded. Of course, if you have any experience with what it might get, feel free to comment below. Always happy to get some feedback. So, but other than that, it's a cool cover. Definitely love the action. Iron Man struck down. And then, of course, we know what's coming up next. Of course, with the War Machine saga, and we're going to move on to the next comic. So here we have it. This is probably definitely what I would say the most valuable comic book that I've got. It is Iron Man 282, the first full cover appearance of War Machine. Love this one. I remember picking up when I was 10 years old. One of my friends at school had gotten it, and I saw that, and I just thought, like, oh man, look at all that firepower. The artwork is just so darn cool. I had to go have it. So I remember that Friday night, I think we were at the comic book shop. I had to have my Iron Man 282. Obviously at the time, Iron Man, War Machine, it was brand new. Had no idea it was going to become this huge part of the Iron Man saga or the Marvelverse in general. So definitely realized this was a very, very glad I had this comic when I saw Iron Man and Iron Man 2 and saw that War Machine played a big part in both those movies. Mostly the latter one, but you definitely saw the foreshadowing in the first Iron Man movie. But one way or another, War Machine is a huge part of the Iron Man universe, and it just so happened I got lucky and happened to be really interested in picking up Iron Man comics when this guy made his first appearance. So this is definitely one of those comic books where I'm really glad that I did not throw it away, mishandle it, kept it fairly well preserved, and 30 years after buying it, still have it. So, of course, part of the reasons wanting to keep such things on the hopes that maybe they'd be one day valuable is heeding my grandfather's story of Action Comics #1, which he said he had gotten when he was a little kid in the 30s, and well, did not keep it. It ended up falling apart, and it ended up getting thrown in the garbage, and he always lamented that he wished he had kept it. And then stories of hearing, of course, my parents and other older family members saying that they had thrown away their baseball cards, only to find out that they became worth quite a bit. So, like a lot of kids in the 90s and a lot of other people, I kept my comic books and my baseball cards, only to find out about 30 years later that, well, for the most part, they aren't really worth much of anything. Because, we didn't throw them out. So, but I was really, really happy to find out that this one is one that actually goes for quite a bit out there on the eBay universe, and seeing it in comic book shops as a highly sought after collectible item. Really happy to have this one. And to take a closer look at it, not sure if I'm going to send this off to get graded either. It is in pretty good condition. There's a tiny little wear on the back, on the top left cover there. There are a few spine ticks. As you can see, there's a couple there. Other than that, this is a comic that is in solid condition. And of course, really to get graded would be if I had any intentions of selling it, which I don't. It's just so cool to have, and I think it's even cooler that it's something that I bought when I was 10 years old and kept it. And I'm actually surprised it's actually in good condition, because I took this baby to school. We swapped comics with friends and so forth, and I still managed to keep this in fairly good condition. So I'm really just happy that I have it, and it's actually still presentable, it's still collector grade, and it's a very nice piece. So we are going to wrap up this video with the last two Iron Man War Machine comics in those first appearances of the War Machine in the Iron Man series. So right there is Iron Man 283 and Iron Man 284. Iron Man 283, even though it is not the first appearance, it is still a really cool cover. I love the color art on it. I love seeing War Machine going great guns. I love the color. It's just a great cover, and it doesn't go for nearly as much as the Iron Man 282 because it's not that first appearance, but it is still one heck of a very, very cool looking cover, and it's a great storyline. And then 284, which also not super highly sought after by collectors, not as much as 282, but also you see Iron Man War Machine's silhouette in the background as the shadow right there. You gotta love kind of the morbid theme of Tony Stark lying in a casket. Both very cool comics, both ones I was very, very eager to have, and also am quite glad I saved these over time. So, and of course, these last two, they wrap up the walkthrough. So if you have any thoughts or what you think, anyone thinks they ought to be graded, any other thoughts or any other stories of your own of having rediscovered some of your old comics or old collectible items, feel free to leave those in the comments below. And once again, just thank you for watching.